Welcome to How We Heard It, the podcast about music, pop culture, movies, and more, with your hosts Wayne Bledsoe and Chuck Campbell.
And this is How We Heard It. My name's Wayne Bledsoe, and this is
Chuck Campbell.
And we've been friends for a long, long time and reviewed music together and worked together, and it's time that we just got out and just talked.
Yes. This week we're going to go a little bit different path than normally. We normally have like a kind of assigned topics, which makes me comfortable because I can kind of do a little research and take notes just so I know what I'm going to say and don't have to try to remember things on the spot, which is not fun. But this time Wayne's going to take the reins and lead us down a path down a... Well, why don't you explain it?
Well, this is something we've talked about before, because when we were writing every week about music, people would sometimes get mad about what we recommended or didn't like, and we would have to explain how being a critic is different than just being a regular listener. And people never quite would sometimes you could talk to them and they would understand.
Right.
Toby Keith fans never understood with me, but, other people did.
Right.
And after I say this, I'd like, you to explain how you would explain it to people, but I would usually say it's like pizza. If you got a cheese pizza, first cheese pizza you ever had, you're going to think it's great. Right. Maybe the best thing you ever had.
Right.
And then you have cheese pizza every day for a year.
Right.
And after that time, you're going to differentiate between this cheese pizza is better than that cheese pizza. And we would get, you wrote 3 album reviews a week.
Yes.
I wrote probably less than that, but I'd say we listened to about the same amount of music in a week. We were constantly getting CDs thrown at us, and before that, vinyl albums.
Right.
So we listened to an amazing amount of music.
Yes.
And we had so much to compare everything we listened to that and it's so much more than what normal people did, that we were much more... We could distinguish more between, okay, this is a little better than that, or this is borrowing from something else. And especially when we knew the history of music, we could say, well, this was done 20 years ago, but done better.
Right.
And a lot of people didn't understand that, but I think that once they did, they understood how critics have a different opinion than they would have.
Right. I think that's fair. And I reviewed more than 5,500 albums.
God almighty.
It was 3 a week, every week.
Yep.
If I was going on vacation, I would do 3 extras or 6 extras, depending on how long I would be gone. And we did have good connections. The format that we got these things in varied. It was vinyl, then it flipped to... there were some cassettes in the mix, unfortunately.
Hated cassettes.
And then it was CDs, and then it got into digital promos because they weren't sending, hard copies or whatever they call it, physical copies anymore. And they were easy to work with, but that 5,000, once you hit the 5,000 mark or the 4,000 mark or whatever, you have to remember that those aren't just albums that I heard. Those are albums that I broke down, listened to completely, and evaluated. And there were plenty of other albums that I listened to that I ultimately opted not to review. So, I would see repeating trends, and I would see artists who maybe deliberately or not deliberately, were like following up on, something that had happened 20 years before, 30 years before. And actually, it was the fear of all that when I first started reviewing. I was recruited to do this just because of my age. I've said this before. I was 22 in Florida, and I understood, who all the new musicians were, so I could write reviews of them. I didn't want to, but they asked me to because they were trying to reach younger readers, and they thought, well, I could speak, their language, and know who the new people are. So my fear was I also didn't know who they might be referencing from the past. And, I read all those Rolling Stone reviews, and to me, all the professional, the New York Times or whatever reviews that they wrote, they were all very very technical
Right.
and articulate and serious, and they would reference everything. It'd be like, well, this song is reminiscent of like a I don't know, an ersatz Carly Simon doing a Four Top song, with a little bit of Herb Alpert in the background. I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? So none of that ever made sense. And I always thought these artists were recording things that way too, and that they really were like absorbing everything from their past. But they don't always. And a lot of what you hear now is more subconscious, leakage or whatever, and just people hitting on the same idea even sometimes. So it's a little dangerous to say they're just copying somebody.
Right.
And it's a little, I don't want to say lazy, but I kind of try to avoid the recommended if you like. You see that everywhere, the RILY. No, RIYL. Okay,
Right.
Anyway, I can't get my acronym straight, and that's kind of a default setting for some critics when they're reviewing something. Sounds like, this person sounds like the Beatles and a little bit of the Kinks and maybe, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But if they're not too reliant on that, it is valuable. I mean, because I hate reading a review where after even reading the review, I have no idea what it sounds like.
Well, and that's something I saw a trick that some reviewers did, and I thought it was a really great way to do this. Rather than try to write that into the text, just at the top, it would just say, Olivia Rodrigo recommended if you like Pat Benatar and Alanis Morissette, and that's it, and just leave that up in its own little corner of the world, and then write what you've got to say about them without just saying, who they're reminiscent of. And I mean, it's a good trick. So I've caved into it myself many times, but
it's cheap though.
Yeah.
The best thing, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but the best thing would be when you got something in and you couldn't put your finger on what they'd listened to. And, I remember when the Strokes came out, Spin magazine, boy, they creamed their jeans over the Strokes. Boy, they thought that was the best thing ever. And I listened to it and I liked it, but it's like, I know the 5 albums you guys have.
Right.
Because that's what it was.
And I'm like, 5 albums.
Right. And then Superdrag released an album called Last Call for Vitriol at the same time, and it's like, I can hear maybe 200 different influences in this. There's lots of different influences. And that's cool.
Right.
But what's coolest is when, like, the B-52s came out, and it's like, where the hell did this come from?
Where any reference points, it's
Right.
just all, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I saw, I think we have talked about her before, Rouge Aftab at Big Ears a couple of years ago, and it was like, I've never heard anything quite like this.
Right.
And it's beautiful.
Right. And that's what you say. It's daunting as a critic to be like, oh my God, I don't know how to describe this. I've never heard anything like this before. But that's the challenge, and that's a key point in what you review. Is like, I've literally never heard anything like this before.
And that's one of the things I think that people don't get is it sounds strange to them because they want something that they're familiar with, whereas critics want something that excites us and says, we can say this is something new. We haven't heard this. We really want to explore this and hear more of it because we haven't heard it before.
Right.
Because we've heard so much.
Right.
The same applies to record store employees.
Right.
I mean, I worked in a record store forever, and you had to hear the top 40 stuff. You had to play it in the store because you were trying to sell it.
Right.
And that's why record store employees listen to, Zulu jive stuff from Africa and you're like, why do you listen to that? It's because I'm sick to death of the cake that's been forced down my pie hole.
But when you're working in a record store, when you're reviewing music or whatever, it's easy to get cynical.
It is.
And you have to keep in mind who your audience is. And your audience is, a lot of times it's generally young people who haven't heard all this before. And they don't need to, not that they don't need to hear it, but if you just break it down and say, oh, well, everybody's already done this, and it's just another version, that kind of diminishes the experience for them, which isn't really fair to them necessarily.
And I would try to keep that in mind.
Right.
And especially when somebody wrote to me.
Right.
And was mad about something that I'd reviewed. And then I would always say, your opinion is just as legitimate as mine.
Exactly.
Mine is coming from that I've heard so much music and I can compare it to so many other things. But if you like it and it connects with you, then more power to you.
Right. Right. If you're 40 years old and talking to a 20-year-old who's never heard a girl band before, it's like, let them enjoy this new experience and not have to think, oh, well, this is just stealing from the Go-Go's or Bananarama or something like that, you know?
Yeah, and it's one of the things with like the pizza analogy is like, if somebody makes a particularly great cheese pizza,
right,
you can tell it's still a great cheese pizza, even though it's the same elements. They don't do anything new, but they just do it so well.
Exactly. That comes down to, I don't know if you do any like benchmarks or anything when you review, but I try to look at what is this artist trying to do and who are they trying to reach. And I know full well this may not be me. Right. And I have to take myself out of it, and I just have to be whoever their intended audience is. So if they are trying to reach, you know, teenagers, it's like when I first started doing K-pop reviews. Okay, it's like, oh my God, it's like I can't ignore this. I can't ignore this. It's just what it is, and I can see it. I can see where it's come from, even though these kids don't know that. It's interesting that it's coming from Korea and other Asian countries, but it's the same thing. It's like, here are 6 boys or here are 6 girls, and this one's the funny one, and this one's the sexy one, and this one's the shy one, and all that stuff. And it's just the role playing and everything, but it helps people, probably more tweens and like junior high or whatever, but it helps them find kind of their niche, because you're trying to figure out who you are at that age, and you find someone you can identify with. And you're not going to identify with someone from 30 years ago, that's your parents' age or whatever.
Who's your favorite Beatle?
Right, exactly.
That was appealing to teens then.
Right, and it was probably, I guess it would have been Paul, right? Or am I wrong on that? Well, no, I'm talking about the teens.
Teens?
Well, he was the cute one, right?
Yeah, Paul was
okay.
The most
well, that's all.
But everybody had a favorite,
whoever's the cute one is going to.
Ringo has a cute name, and he's like got this puppy dog face.
Yeah. Maybe you can. He's mysterious.
He's probably the least mysterious.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that would be Lennon.
He's the one that the girls who thought they couldn't get Paul said, "Oh, no, that guy."
Yeah, I can't get any of the other 3, but there's my Beatle.
But I like Ringo.
Right.
But the analogy is true, though. I mean, I think in K-pop bands and in Backstreet Boys and all of this, they're creating characters and giving an array of different kinds of guys or girls for the teens to because not every teen loves the big heartthrob. Sometimes they love the shy one.
Yeah. And that especially both boy bands and girl bands appeal mainly to young women. And that was the cool thing about Spice Girls, is that these were all very well-defined women, and they were all girl power, right? It was all girl power. And you had like, the talky, funny one, Ginger, and Baby Spice. I mean, she was adorable, and Posh Spice was for the girls who were kind of standoffish. And it's just like you just be drawn to that. And I mean, I actually saw the Spice Girls live. And it was one of the weirdest concerts. It was in Atlanta, and I was there by myself at this show. I forget how that happened. And so many girls there, so many girls. It was at what's the outdoor amphitheater down there? Is it Lakewood or is that Nashville?
Atlanta?
Yeah,
Chastain Park, probably.
I guess. Yeah, it was quite some time ago now. Yeah. But the girls were all wound up, and you could see them on stage and performing, and why. Like I never understood how Posh Spice was even a thing, because she couldn't sing, and like all the other 4 had these big solo parts, but then you see her on stage moving around, and you see the dads. It's like, oh, that's what Posh Spice is.
She was the best looking.
Yeah,
I'm not. I know that we laughed about it at the time. I mean, you were a big Spice Girls fan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I saw them in Denmark. And in Sweden, and then I went through this Eastern European tour, and they were like just all huge all over Europe. And I came back and I went to Katz in Knoxville, and I said, where can I get this Spice Girls? No one had heard of them yet. I thought, and I said, you're going to. Trust me, you're going to.
Probably what made you a super fan. You discovered them first.
Exactly. Yeah, I knew them before they hit it big.
But, before they sold out.
One quick aside that's got nothing to do with anything except it's me at the Spice Girls concert and how weird things can happen. It was outside, and I was just really tired, and I fell asleep. They had this intermission, and I fell asleep. And after I fell asleep, it got dark. And then the lights came on, and the band came back out on stage. And thousands of girls just started screaming at the top of their lungs. And I woke up by myself outside
in a field
with
full of
thousands of
screaming
girls screaming everywhere. I had no idea where I was. Anyway, that's my Spice Girls story. So that's
well, I have to say that I was never a fan of boy bands, never a fan of the Spice Girls. But when I would have to review the shows, when I would review the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and they actually put on good shows and they could sing.
Mm-hmm.
And there were tons of artists out there who were not singing; they were playing the tapes.
Mm-hmm.
Britney Spears being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But those boy bands had talent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you write a review, you have to say, okay, these people have talent. And the same thing with 311, which, they're old band now.
Right.
But when they came out, I was in my 30s. And I went to that concert, and it was like, okay, this is the first concert I've ever been to where I really felt like this is for somebody other than me.
Right.
This is for much younger people than I am.
right.
And you have to acknowledge that.
Right.
A lot of critics don't, but you and I both did that sort of thing.
Yeah,
we
and
acknowledge.
that was the whole thing with the Spice Girls. Like, this is a giant phenomenon,
Right.
and you can see it on TV and you can hear about it or whatever. But to go and be at a show and see the phenomenon live,
Right.
you gain a respect for it because they do. And Spice Girls, they are all singers except Posh, and you could just see them work in the crowd, and I don't know, I just had great respect for how they manipulated it, how they knew how to trigger a response, and how empowering that was for all these, 12, 14-year-old girls who were there.
And this is not a view that you would expect from a critic that was syndicated all over the country.
Right, exactly. And I didn't review their show, but I just like to see what it is that makes people respond the way they do to acts that I think, how did they get to be that big?
Well, did you get letters or emails or whatever from people that just would not accept that you didn't like something? Or I don't know if you wrote back to them as much as I did.
That was very different between us, because you would take time and craft these very respectful replies, and I'd just be delete. It's like I said what I had to say, whatever, delete. I would respond to some people, not always politely, but if they, I'm trying to think of where I had any discourse that was productive.
Right.
Because if they just come at you, it's like, look, I get it. You like this band. I'm glad you like this band. You don't need me to validate your appreciation for a band. Have a good life and, just enjoy it and take it for what it is.
Well, what was funny about it, when I would reply, and sometimes I called them, and that really would, people were like,
never do that.
Where's this coming from? But they don't expect you to respond. And when you respond, I got some nasty ones. And
then they were nicer.
And when I called up and said, "Hi, this is my name's Wayne Bledsoe, and I'm the critic that you wrote this scathing letter to," but I said, "Let me explain why I felt like this."
Right.
And there was my best one, which most people would immediately think, "Oh gosh, somebody called me, somebody cared, somebody read it," and they would be nicer.
Mm-hmm.
But I reviewed Jewel's show.
Okay.
Down at World's Fair Park here in Knoxville.
Okay.
And I like Jewel. But I wrote in the review that she's got 3 or 4 great songs, and the rest are kind of high school poetry, and she needs to make them all as good as the ones that are great.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was mad as he could be when he wrote to me, and I called him up. And I said, here's why I said that. I said, I think she's really good, but I think she needs to work harder to get these other songs to the level of the songs that are really good. And we started talking, and by the end of the conversation, we were about to picket the New Sentinel for a union action. He was going to come down and picket with us.
Oh, wow.
Because he was a union guy too, and it was great.
Yeah, wow.
But it was so funny because
Didn't know you were starting an insurrection.
no. By the end of the conversation, it's like, "Yeah, I'm a union guy. I'll come down there. When are you doing it?"
Well, I don't know. I think the ones that I responded best to were people who had been reading me for a while and finally wrote me, and I had no idea who they were, and they're just like, because I know I'm different, and I know the things I like, people aren't going to like. I just try to express it in a way to explain it how my little brain hears music,
right.
And people will write and say, "Oh, I've been reading you for years, but I hadn't written before." I would always respond to that kind of a letter,
Well, and that's one of the things also that I would try to explain to people, and we talked about this a little earlier, is you have to read a critic enough to know what they like and don't like,
right?
And how that, if they don't like something, you know that you might like it. We were talking about a friend of ours, Roger Moore, who writes Movie Nation, and I think Roger's a little prudish. I love Roger to death, but when I read his reviews and he's a little critical about something that has sex in it, I think, I'm probably going to love it. I can pretty much trust him on everything as far as our opinions are very similar on movies.
Right.
But I know that's one of the spots where we're going to disagree. If it's a little perverse and a little too sexual,
right,
he is not going to like it as much as I might like it.
Yeah. I mean, come across albums like I've reviewed a lot of like really supercharged, sexual music.
Right. You've shocked me with some things.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh wow, did they just say that? And yeah, it was actually when we were talking about
Lords of Acid.
Not just Lords of Acid. I was thinking about Nas and Khalees.
Right.
They did the song "In Public." I thought that was a great song, and I hadn't heard that in a while, and I was just like thinking of something to draw from the past to recommend.
Right.
And I listened to it. I listened to her verses, and like, oh man, it's about having sex in public, and they were a couple and all that. And then he comes in with this rap, and it's like, oh well, okay, I can't recommend this. And I tried to think, I know I reviewed this album, and I just probably said something like, you don't want anyone like under 16 in the room when you're listening to this. Just leave it at that.
Oh, they could probably tell, whoever else.
Well, I mean, yeah,
it's all normal to them now. There's nothing shocking.
It's a great song, though. It's got a great rhythm.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone just knows her from Milkshake, but this was like just real sensual and everything. And then it got real nasty when Nas popped in. But I don't know. But as far as the letters go, speaking of sexual, did you ever get letters from people who were like hitting on you?
The only time I got one like that is when I wrote, and this was not about, as a critic, I wrote a story about like a kind of a honeymoon hotel up in Gatlinburg that my wife went up to, and I wrote a funny column about it. And then I got a letter from some swinger.
Okay.
Obviously wanted to swing with the two of us. It's like, I don't think so.
No, so you didn't have to explain to him anything or her anything, right?
No. I could tell right off what was going on here. It's like, no.
Well, that was one of my first letters in Daytona. And it was this, and I was like 21.
Right.
Not bad for a 21-year-old. And I get this letter from this old guy, and he said, "I'd love to take you for ice cream." and I got that. I was totally naive.
Oh my God!
Why does this guy want to take me for ice cream? And the people I were working with was like,
that's not ice cream.
Yeah. It's like, you don't want to reply to that. And then he wrote me again, and then I got some other kind of, I don't know. It was it was just a different angle that I didn't expect.
Well, I used to get drunk. I mean, the alcoholic community was really big on reading my columns.
Okay.
Because I would like it.
I drew Lonely Hearts. So,
I got
worse.
Alcoholics. I got this one woman who called me over and over and over, and I finally had to tell her to stop.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy who somebody told me was actually a judge when I was doing one of my radio shows. And he called like every week and would request things. And it's like, well, the first couple times I did it, and it's like, no, I'm not going to play that. And then he just became this obnoxious nut.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I've had a few of those.
This is, I've had all kinds of different. My favorite one, I don't think I've said this here yet, was I reviewed PJ Harvey. Right. And I gave her 5 stars.
Right.
And this guy wrote me and said, he said, yes, PJ Harvey deserves 5 stars, but for none of the reasons you said.
I've had a few of those.
And so he went down the list of how I was just completely off the mark, and he didn't see how I had any business doing that. And I did respond to him. I said, "I'm surprised you can see anything the way you're looking down your nose at everybody." So I wasn't trying to make friends with people who would come at me like that.
Oh, I didn't make friends with people like that.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Right. But the best letters always came from the artists themselves. Because one of the things, my 3 review format, I would always try to do the lead review as someone everyone would have heard of, just to get the hook, get names out there. And then the second one would be kind of middle ground, people that music lovers have probably heard. And then the third one was just potluck, and a lot of times I would just take completely unheard of, unheralded artists and try to get them a little pub. And as time went on and everything started getting on Spotify and everything, those became more valuable. Yeah. Because, everybody's written about or is reading about the top one, but that third one, there's so much product out there now that you can sample. Right. You don't know where to start. So my little third acts would start getting some, traction there. But the best ones always came from them. And it was people that, I had some criticism for. And, I would get messages saying, thank you very much for the feedback. I really appreciate it. I haven't really had any critical, experience, and I think you made good points or whatever. Just like very humble, right? And then they would even follow up when they'd release another album and say, I'd love for you to review it if you could. It was just real, charming even to someone like me, and there was no ice cream involved or anything like that.
Well, I reviewed Jill Barber, and I think it was Kat Edmondson in one review. Yeah. And I was talking about here's 2 great artists that you may not have heard of that you ought to check out, and I compared their albums a little bit, and I got an email from Jill Barber saying, I went in and bought her record and it's great.
Yeah. I like that too. That. And like I say, that goes back to the fans who've been reading you for a while, and they're actually fans of you, which is kind of a hard, like, you recognize my name, and you read that. And, that makes you feel like, you better be a little more responsible with how you're using your power.
But that was one of the best things about being a critic. And I still get that when I go out and I'm out. People come up to me and say, you turned me on to so many good songs or so many good records. It's like I was and actually Mike Flanagan, who worked with us, turned me on to the Drive-By Truckers. Okay. And I wrote a review of Southern Rock Opera, and they became one of my favorite bands. And I have had more people come up and tell me that how much they appreciated me writing about the Drive-By Truckers because they wouldn't have heard about them otherwise.
You may have turned me on to the Drive-By Truckers with that review.
I may have.
Because that was the first Drive-By Truckers record I ever heard, and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah. And all this stuff has been great. But back then, nobody much knew about them. And you did the same thing with people. I know, because you turned me on to people I'd never heard of.
I know. Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah.
But, well, how do you process? I don't know if people have thought about this. But how a critic becomes a critic and what their objective is, and and what they even look at as an audience. See, I had to break all this down. Now, you had a natural affinity for music and educating yourself about music, so you kind of came better armed than I was. And I was just like, hey, Chuck, you're doing this column. And I was like, oh, my God.
Well, see, I was always dragging people, to my stereo and say, listen to this, because this is great. Because, I was into music from when I was tiny.
Right.
And I had 2,000.
And your sister did that with you. So.
Yeah, my sister was she was a huge influence. And then all the people she knew, she was 4.5 years older.
Right.
And they would leave albums after parties and stuff. I'd listen to all those. And my sister was like the coolest kid in the world. And she, turned me on to all this stuff. But, with me, it was like I just wanted people to hear stuff that I loved. And that when I became a critic, which was few years into me working in newspapers, it's like, here's an opportunity to turn people on to this stuff. And it was, I've never stopped. I guess I've read radio shows and things like that. Mm-hmm. And
did you ever think about who your audience is? Did you ever a lot of times in marketing or whatever, they have you do a prototype of who your listener is. and it's a 42-year-old from just have a visual of a person or a group.
I never really did, but I'll tell you, it was one of the most upsetting things to me when you'd go into like a used record or CD store and you'd see a whole lot of copies of something you recommended.
Oh no, I sold those.
Like, oh, somebody didn't like this, and you knew that they would have not known about it had you not written about it. So you knew that
it was your
bought
fault.
it, and they didn't like it.
Well, the good thing is maybe other people saw your review and couldn't afford it, but now they can buy it used.
Yeah.
So it keeps on going. Well, I think so. For me, being put in this position of writing a column and having no idea how to go about it, and not being comfortable talking about the history, I was writing for my editors to start with.
Wow.
Because it was just like, I don't know if this is what they want. And I was writing for my editors and using, these educated Rolling Stone reviews as my prototype. And I was just way out of my league and just ready to quit. And they worked with me, especially the top editor, and we talked. And she said, and I know I've probably talked about this before, but, she said, well, who are you writing for, And I said, well, I'm writing for people who, like music and blah, blah, blah. She said, well, it's almost like you're writing for musicians. It's almost like you're writing for professional musicians. And she said, your reviews are running in a family newspaper in a beach town. So you're really writing for young people who are at the beach today or going to the mall after school or, going to a concert after work or something like that. Just think of those people, write for those people. And she gave me advice to just be myself. She said my best asset isn't, all this deep knowledge that I have about music, but just my ability to just describe something I like. So I started writing for more specific people. And then, like we're talking about the pizza, after 5,500 pizzas, that I've been through, I could see how, like when you're writing something is for a young audience, that young people are just sponges for new music because they're going through all these great life experiences. They're falling in love, they're getting married and moving out and starting careers and all that. And at that point in your life, you're just like completely open to new music. And that's usually what people lock in on as what they think for the rest of their lives was the best music that ever happened, just because it so happened to happen when they were 18 or 20
and they needed it.
And they needed it, and they were just open to everything about it. And younger people, it's a little beyond them. And older people, I think when you get more settled into life and everything, you're not quite as open to like crazy infatuation songs and stuff like that. If you've been married for a few years, but so when I would go look back at, I could be much older than the teens when I was writing K-pop reviews, but I was trying to think, what about a 15-year-old who's awkward at school, a misfit, doesn't really have an identity, doesn't feel comfortable with the world. How would it be to see this, and to see myself there? Or, club people, like people in their early 20s when they're drinking, they don't live home anymore, and they're out just picking people up or running out with their friends and everything. Is this music festive enough to capture that pure emotional energy you have to be out there? It's not for me, sitting at home, watching Survivor, or it's like if I'm going out tonight. And so I tried to look to see, and that's what I mean when I say every time I would review something, I would think, well, what are they trying to accomplish, and do they accomplish it? And it doesn't matter if I like the genre or not. It doesn't matter if it affects me greatly or not, if it's intended for me or not. It's a matter of what will it do for these people. And so I would, and I would always code reviews so that you could tell that, for fans of whatever, like a R&B, hip hop, blah blah blah, who were looking for something different or something spicier or something more mellow, and just zero in on it that way.
What do you think about the notion, though, of the idea of writing criticism as an art form, which I think it is?
Right.
If you're an artist, as soon as you start thinking about your audience and how you can craft your art to meet that compromises your art.
Right. Yeah, it does. It does.
That's the opposite side of that coin.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons that I would break down everything. And if it was something that was just art, if it was like just something unconventional and very artistic, and then I would just throw all that demographic stuff out of the window. Because that's why I'm saying, like you identify what kind of music it is, what they're trying to do. And if you're trying to do something like really unconventional and artistic and imaginative, then I don't care who's listening to it. It's like, this is what this is. So I could do, I could do like a K-pop band, but I could do, Jane Seabury or something like that. And,
well, let me ask you, because I did this when I started writing reviews. Were you snarkier in the beginning because it was more entertaining?
I think I was, because I was encouraged to be humorous, because the editors where I was, they found Rolling Stone reviews to be very dry and pretentious, which they were. I just took those as like, oh, well, here's the gold standard of what it is to be a reviewer, and how could I ever be that? And then over time, I started looking at their reviews and like, oh, what a bunch of BS. They're just like trying to impress each other, and they're not really concerned with what their audience is or who they are, and they're just trying to be impressive. So, and yes, I think that I was definitely snarkier. I was definitely, there are a lot of things. I've always wondered, just how bad my early reviews were. And I'm glad that they're not digitally. You could probably find them in a library or something, but,
Well, people, my friend Bradley Reeves, he will pull out, he goes into estate sales and things. He's always looking for music stuff because he's got a little museum. But he's always pulling out clips from the News Sentinel. So anytime he finds us, he'll send me a picture a lot of times. And, some of the stuff that I know that I wrote back then, I was really trying to be entertaining, and I would be nastier to be funny.
Right.
And then it really hit me at some point.
It's not right.
It's
not nice. It's not
disingenuous.
Yeah.
And man, I wish I could take back tons of reviews that were just snarky and just smart-assed, and they were funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of how you prove your cred as a reviewer, though. If you can, I don't know if that's true, but I think you're proving you're in the club if you can be snarky about something.
Well, I think that's the unfortunate way that reviewers start.
Right.
Yeah,
and when they get better, unless you're Lester Bangs, who was always snarky and funny, but he wasn't really reviewing albums.
Right.
He was just unhinged.
Yeah, he was being funny.
Right.
And at the expense a lot of times of artists who didn't deserve it, even though I love reading his stuff.
Right. Well, I think that, like for me, I got more and more systematic and set more rules for myself as I went along. And, like I say, I would always try to lead my three with a well-known name.
Right.
And then the second one, and then the third one. With the third ones, the unknowns, I would never punch down on them.
Right.
It's like there's no reason to take someone no one's even heard of.
You only picked
and
it
talk
because you
about
liked
how
it.
bad. Yeah,
Right.
This is my chance to elevate somebody who's struggling out there and who's not even known. So, hands off. They're always going to get. I think they always got at least a 3 stars. And with some encouragement on what they did well. What maybe they could build on. But the top ones, I would still be snarky. It's like you're already, established.
Right.
And not ugly, snarky, but just like, still hasn't figured out how to make lyrics rhyme, or something like that. But
but that's part of it. Is I'm the very same way. I felt more liberty if somebody was really popular and famous, and they were making money no matter what I said.
Right.
I would be snarkier.
Right.
But
But if it deserves it.
Right. But the people at the bottom, the people that nobody would have heard of if you hadn't
reason.
written about it, either don't write about them or be
Yeah.
writing something that's halfway.
It says
possible.
more about you if you pick somebody out that no one's ever heard of and
then
crap on them.
just punch down on them. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, well, and and I would see things and I would read their back. I don't know if I usually like to know a little bit about their background before I got far into it, and then I would like sample tracks, and there'll be someone and they're like, oh, I really want to like this person, and then I'd get to the end. It's like, oh, there's just nothing to say.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can
Been
do
there
for
too.
them. They just gotta let's see what happens next time. And like I say, I felt more of an affinity for these these unknowns than I did the big names, because everybody else is doing the big names too. And I mean,
Right.
I want to weigh in on them so
Yeah.
people can tell, where I'm coming from. But the little ones is like, I just love to champion those people, and they were the ones who were most likely to respond.
Yeah.
And so, but that's kind of my criteria. But as far as reading other critics, I stopped reading them so much because they just seemed, I was less and less enamored of the major critics as I've got into it myself longer and longer. It's like, it's just a dog and pony show,
Well, you brought up Rolling Stone. I mean, there were really good critics there, and then there were ones that were just trying
Hacks.
to, they were just doing their thing and they were silly ass.
Yeah.
I mean, Chet Flippo was a great reviewer.
Right.
I could trust Chet Flippo, and there were a few other people. I mean, that were out there, but that's one of the things.
Spin had some, when Spin got rolling with it, they had some good ones, but.
Well, they had some.
I don't know how you felt. Did you read reviews before you did your own?
No,
because I didn't want any other critic to affect my opinion of something.
The only time I did that is if I read something and I didn't know anything about that album, and it wasn't sitting in front of me.
Right.
And then I might go seek it out.
Right.
If I read a review that something I didn't know about, I wanted, and they informed me.
Right.
And I went out, and if it was good, I wanted to let other people know.
Right.
But that's the only time. I never read anybody else's reviews before I wrote mine.
No, because I just figured you would just subconsciously be influenced with what you say.
And it's interesting because what you were talking about, the not knowing that much about something. I first started reviewing jazz, country and jazz, and I don't read music.
Okay.
So I kind of felt the same way to some extent. I mean, I knew the history of jazz. I knew tons and tons of artists, but I couldn't tell you, okay, this run is, these chords.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
So I just took it from a perspective of me, somebody who's a listener who likes it, and related as much as I could to that rather than writing it for musicians. Because, they could have seen through the fact that I couldn't read music.
Right. Right. Yeah, I had very limited
Right.
music. I did have piano lessons, so I
Right.
could very, very rudimentary kind of read music to an extent. And, I had some, music classes at UT, but
Right.
it was just a passing thing and never anything I saw as part of my future. Any more than my bowling classes that I took at UT.
That's in bowling too.
Yeah, bowling is great.
Oh, bowling's great.
I was gonna minor in psychology, and
That will do you no good. I can attest.
I know. Well, I found out that.
I majored in psychology.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna minor in it because I was really interested in it, and maybe even more interested than I was in communications. But then the College of Communications at that time, they didn't acknowledge minors. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to take this hard psychology class. Give me bowling, and I'll finish off my hours, and I got a good bowling thing from that.
Well, I don't think, back to your previous point, I don't know that as a reviewer, your ability to read music really is...
No.
Has no bearing.
That's just it. When I tried to insert what little I knew, about backbeats or something
Right.
like that, and then my editor would say, now, why are you writing about backbeats? Do you think your audience knows what they are? And I'd be like... Probably not. I was just proud that that's something I recognized, so I threw it in there, So, but yeah.
The thing I could do is I could tell, like in jazz, when they were quoting another song.
Right.
And, I always threw that in there because I thought that was cool. I think that's cool when, an artist does a medley and they start picking up little pieces of, a little piece of Purple Haze or something else and throwing it in there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And not everybody is going to know it. Or everybody's going to go, gosh, that sounds familiar, but what is it?
Yeah. Yeah, if you can do that.
Right.
And how often they would take things from other songs and not credit it.
Oh, yeah, tons.
And there was one time I got so mad. It was a group. It may have been a hip-hop group, but they stole the key line from the score of Phantasm, the horror movie Phantasm. And I was nerdy enough to have that album, and I called it out in my review. I said, there's an uncredited, riff from the Phantasm soundtrack. And I thought that probably blew their minds that anyone would know that and recognize it. And I think I think I heard from a publicist over that, and there was some kind of action there, but I don't know. Well, I don't know if we're. I had all these different ideas about criticism and everything, but we're talking from our perspective,
right?
Of what it was like in the heyday of journalism, which is over now,
long over, unfortunately,
and especially for critics and everything that's non-essential, which was like 80% of most newsrooms were non-essential.
We found out.
Yeah, we found out that was not important, but it's very important to get something that some local TikToker did and get that in the story real fast.
Of course.
No, and I'm being flippant. There are some fantastic active journalists now that I admire for holding strong and doing great work. So it is important, and it is my background and everything. But I've moved on, and but as far as criticism goes, it's kind of like devolved into the hands of bloggers now, and people who have like no training whatsoever and no experience, and some of them are good. Okay,
yep.
I mean, they're not just all. You can't just dismiss them all out of hand. But there's just a lot of it's really just fan stuff and even propaganda, and it's like you can't see. I don't know, and I don't even know who's looking for it or who has the need for it now. I think that the best need for criticism now is just to help people wade through this mountain of stuff that's there that's not as clearly discharged to the public as it was in the days of. I secretly enjoyed seeing big record labels take the dive, because it's like they've been like riding on the backs of artists and everything for so long, but it disrupted, the distribution of music. And go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying now you can find everything out there, so there's so much competition that you kind of. I mean, I want a guide.
Right.
Because so much is out there. I want to find somebody that I can trust.
Right.
That can say, "Hey, you might like this."
And the problem is there just aren't people doing it now.
No,
and there aren't people that will pay an income for people to do that kind of thing. So if you're doing it of your own interest, you're going to do it your own way. If you're doing it on your own dime.
And if you've got a lot of people out there are trying to get perks from the companies that promote these artists, so you really can't trust them.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's like when the few times I would talk to journalism classes, and it was always, this is toward the end of it, it was like, you have to pay for the truth. Right. And you have to pay for an objective opinion to some extent, too. Because if not, you're going to have people out there who are just kind of glad-handed. Oh, I'm going to say this good thing. This. I'll give these people a quote that they can put in their promotion, and maybe they'll, send me their albums early, or they'll, get on a junket and go out to a trip.
You could see that even with some publicists, and especially in the film industry, with their junkets and everything. And it was like, we'll fly you to Paris on our dime to review this movie. And it's like, how much influence would that be? But I don't know what the business model is now for journalists to be paid to be fair and informative. And like, how are they going to make money? Who's going to pay for that? And I mean, that's the problem with journalism, period, is like, who's going to pay for any of it?
Right.
And the answer is not many people.
Right.
So.
And that's why you can't trust so much of the news now.
Right.
What people call news is because there's an agenda. Somebody is paying for it who has an agenda.
Right. And they do. And it's also, not to just harp on people who review music today, because again, there are some people who are doing such a good job, and I'm really like proud of people who like probably aren't making anything to do this, and they're really putting their heart into it. So there's the talents out there. I just don't know if there's a way to make it viable. But so much of it's just plain wrong too. You know, they just get everything wrong. They get details wrong, and names wrong, and lyrics are wrong, and the references are wrong, and it's like, oh gosh, I don't know. And you've got automated queuing. It's like you say, people like want to listen to or would read critics to help them, like guide them through this big mess of product. But
What about the phantom of AI writing reviews?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You've got phantom of AI writing reviews, and you got these algorithms and program things, and Spotify or whatever will say, "Hey, you'll like this, you'll like this, and you'll like this," and it may just not sound like anything you would like at all, but you're just being conditioned to just respond to what an automated thing is telling you to listen to next, and it's like you have no idea. Music is so complex and so subjective that no one, if you like something, no one has any idea why unless you try to explain it to them. And it can be just an emotional thing that you just respond to and doesn't even have a clear explanation. So how is AI going to figure that out,
And I mean, when Pandora started coming in, it's like, well, we'll put in recommendations on things we think you'll like because of what you've chosen.
Right.
It's like everything now, it's catered to what you already like.
Right.
So you're not going to be exposed to something that's really odd that you might like if you listen to it a couple of times, but at first it's going to be kind of off-putting because it's so different. Because you're never going to, that's the thing, you're not going to hear anything that's really different.
Right.
And that's what I always wanted when I read critics.
Right.
Was I wanted them to expose me to something that I wouldn't normally gravitate toward.
Yeah, I like that too. And when I was younger, it always got off when, a critic liked something that I liked. Because then it is that validation.
Yeah,
You say you don't need it, but it's like, I really like this album, but I don't know. And then some critic comes in like 5 stars. And it's like, yes. So, I mean, that's a good, kind of triumphant feeling. But I don't know what the future is, now and where we are and
the people who turn me on to new music and movies now more often are other artists.
Okay.
When I have an artist on The Swerve or something, when I used to have the late night show, people would say, "Oh, I bet you'd like this," and it would be something really weird because I like really weird stuff.
Well, we do that with movies.
Yeah, we do that with movies all. But it's like it's more word of mouth now than it is reading something someplace.
Well, and you have to cultivate the friends who will have an ear for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I have friends who do that. I'll just say, I thought you'd like this, and I listen. It's like, you're right. I do like it, and I don't know why. They didn't know why they thought I would like it, but I just.
And I'm totally willing to listen to something that the algorithm says you might like this. I'm insatiable.
Right.
But I put less value on those recommendations than I do when Wayne tells me something, or George Middlebrooks tells me, or Todd Steed tells me, and I'm like, yes, I know this is worth listening to.
By the way, we haven't said we've got John Baker here.
Oh, yeah,
the Arbor,
John
our
Baker.
engineer. That's the third voice you're hearing, so that's John talking. And
I've never had a microphone on this podcast before. So.
Well, I want to.
He's got a mic now.
While we're on this subject of people turning on to things, and you need to hear this. In fact, we ought to hear this after we sign off here. John turned me on to an artist named John Paul, and John knows that I like really strange, sometimes bad music.
Okay,
it is definitely so bad it's good.
It's bad. It's so bad it's good, and you will love it. It's so wrong.
So bad it's good.
So wrong it's right.
Right.
But that's the thing you have to have, like he was saying, you have to have your network of people who turn you on to stuff. And I wish we had more actual critics that we could trust.
Yeah, it just seems like we have fewer, and it's not even an ambition for many people now. Right. We had so many people to look up to with what they were doing. We could read what they were doing and maybe imagine how we would do it. And now it's like, I don't know where they're getting it. It's like, not from a fan site. A fan site's going to say, "Oh, every one of these songs is fantastic," blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, it's just propaganda.
And like we've said before on here, I think the hardest thing to do when we were critics is write something negative about an artist that we loved.
Right.
And you had to do it, I had to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I hated that. I hated writing bad things about people I thought were extremely talented.
And people who were nice.
And of course, I would mention they're extremely talented. This is surprising that this is so mundane.
I don't think we've talked about it before. There was a band called Collective Soul. It had a big song called "Shine," and they had some good music, and I liked it pretty well. But I saw them in concert, and I thought their show was dull.
Right.
And I wrote that I thought it was dull.
Right.
I was thinking, man, and I'd done an interview with one of the members, and he was like super nice. And I write this review that's really negative.
I hate that.
And I'm walking to my car, and the entire band is out by their bus talking to their fans, greatest guys in the world. And I just went back to my car thinking, you are an asshole.
You drove off as fast as you could.
I drove off just thinking, well, they didn't recognize me. Nobody knew who I was, but I just walked off thinking, jeez.
Has this little bit of a odd topic that I was laughing about it today, thinking about this, but has being a critic affected other things that you do in your life?
It probably there are sometimes that I still analyze things too hard.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, see that's something. I got to, my columns were distributed, and at the end they were going to Gannett, which is like 250 news outlets around the country, and it got to where I had to write 300-word reviews. Everything I wrote was 300 words.
Right.
So if it's a little 3-song album by a newcomer, a 3-song EP, or like a 16-song, mega thing, 300 words, no matter what. And I got to be an expert at 300 words, and I could just write it without even counting or looking and everything. And I noticed that pretty much everything I wrote from then on became 300 words. So, and I would get a text from someone and be like, what did you think of the new Game of Thrones episode? You think Jon Snow will make it? And then I would respond with like, yeah, I thought it was pretty good, but I don't know that Jon Snow is really as likable as they want him to be, but obviously he's going to make it through to get around to the ending because he's got to be there. But what they're doing with Khaleesi, they're making her look more mental and everything, and I don't like that because I think she's got a really interesting character. And now I'm liking Cersei even more than you should ever like Cersei because she's such a villain, but she's so complicated.
Pretty soon you had 300 words.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It would be, that was a 300-word response. And the reply to that would be something like, yeah. So then, it got different, and like I would get a text like, what did you think of the new Ted Lasso? And I said, cool, Coach Beard's a funky dancer, and then Timmy something back like, I know that's right, with a laughing face, and that's all it had to be. But I just had to start cutting down on emails and texts and
explanations. You guys need to do an experiment and write a review in all emojis.
Oh, yeah. I could probably do that.
Well, I quit going to local concerts just for enjoyment for a long time because I couldn't just enjoy them because I was sitting there analyzing everything about it.
Yeah.
If I went out of town, no problem.
Right.
But here in town,
it's because you've reviewed every local band there is,
right?
And you know them all.
You're so entrenched,
Well, I mean, the local ones I could go to because I wasn't reviewing the local folks, but if it was a show, if somebody coming in out of town, those are the ones I couldn't go to and enjoy because I was sitting there going, well, this could be a little bit better, and the sound kind of sucks here, and.
Well, it's also a danger of being a recording engineer, too, because
sure.
I can't.
Yeah,
it's hard to listen to music without saying, that guitar needs to be panned over there a little bit, and that drum's too bright. And, it's just like, it sounds like it sounds. Just enjoy it or don't.
I do love that, at this age, and I think this comes from having so much experience invested in music, that I'll still hear a new song and just get crazy excited about it.
It's almost like falling in love.
Yeah.
When you hear a song and you think, oh man, I just love that song.
Right. And most people who get up to our age, they're not really open to new music, but we are because of this long history we've had with it. So, I feel bad for the people who, friends who say, oh, I've not bought anything new. I've not listened to anything new in 10 years. Like, oh. So your life just kind of froze, didn't it? You know?
It is hard for me, and much harder for me to relate to, hearing a great song now. And I think this partly age, just going through so much, in life. It's like, it takes something really, really special before you go, wow.
Yeah, songs about infatuation and like silly emotions you have as a young adult when the whole world is going to change on just someone looking at you a certain way. And, we're kind of beyond that. So you're not going to connect to that. But I can still... And it could just be the structure of a song or the structure of a hook. And I'm just like, I got to hear that again. I got to hear that again. I told you that Doja Cat song, Say So. They had like an hour long of just that song over and over, and I would play it and then play it again and play it again, and then I would sleep, and I would just like the chorus would go through my mind. I mean, just months and maybe even years, that song just stuck in my head because of how it was crafted.
Right.
And it was just a silly flirting song, but I just loved it.
Well, and I think you've already said this, Chuck, but didn't you say, because I think I'm similar to you this, in that I'm a melody and harmony first, and if that passes muster, I'll get to the lyrics.
Right.
And if I love the melody and the harmony, but then I get to the lyrics and the lyrics are crap, well, well.
Yeah.
Are you? How are you in that regard?
Pretty
Wayne?
similar. I mean, the melody is really, really important for me. But lyrics, I mean, I've always loved Bob Dylan, and it's like, sometimes his melodies are nothing, hardly. Mm-hmm. And he's stolen a melody from an old folk song or whatever. Right. But if the lyrics are good enough, I'll go with it no matter what.
Right.
But, well, you have any recommendations this
I guess so. I didn't think, I don't even know if we got, what was our subject? It seems like we did all right.
Being a critic.
We did it.
Okay, what was it like to be a critic? Okay. Let's see, I do. For a movie, this is an old favorite of mine, and I don't know if you've seen this one. It's a horror film, but it was from 1983, and it was called Curtains.
No, I don't know that
Okay,
one.
So it was a Canadian movie, and it's the basic plot is a veteran actress is trying to please her director, and she's doing undercover work at an asylum for her character, and the director has tricked her, and she ends up being taken as insane. So she's stuck in this asylum, and meanwhile he goes and invites 6 other upcoming actresses to his mansion in like remote Canada, just bitter cold, and ice and frozen lakes and all that plays into it. And the interesting thing about this film is it was in the era of slasher films, and the producer wanted a slasher film, but the director wanted to do something more artsy and more of an Agatha Christie kind of sophisticated mystery about, who's doing it, because a body count starts, of course, as this is going to happen. And the director and producer just fought, and eventually the producer fired the director quit. So then the producer took over the production, recut some scenes, revamped the plot, and you've got this just bizarre Frankenstein of a movie where it'll be like these 6 actresses sitting at dinner having like these great bonding or little catty things, but also bonding and these great dialogue and everything, and then all of a sudden one of them's getting bludgeoned and decapitated, and it just goes back and forth.
Our kind of
and they just kind of like churned it out and released it, and it bombed, and the critics hated it and everything. But it got a new life like 10 years or 15 years later when cable picked it up. So it started showing up on late nights, and it got a cult following. And then this cult following demanded that they put this movie out on DVD, and they did. So it's like, I don't mind that it's so crazy, incongruous, because it does just linger on some like, chase scene or anything or something, and then you've got and like some of the characters are like older too, and not the people you see in slasher film, but it's just that bizarre upside down tone that drove people away, but then ultimately came back around and got people's attention. It's called Curtains, and it came out in 1983. Samantha Eggar plays the veteran actress. Yeah. And who was it? John Vernon, I believe, was the director. Sleazebag, and it's he's like demeaning all the women who've come. Like one of them's a ballerina, and one's a young ice skater, one's a comedian, and all this stuff, and they all want this role. And he, it's just he mistreats them and everything. But and like I say, they kind of bond with each other. But it's just interesting, and you can get it, and it's streaming, and it's on DVD. And if you miss the resurgence in late night cable of this movie, it played up too. So that's just something I want to throw out there that a lot of people don't know about.
All right. I'm going to recommend something very different.
Okay.
It's a documentary called Tabloid. It's
okay.
by director Errol Morris, and it's about a woman who gets a thing for a young Mormon man, and kidnaps him.
Okay.
into a romantic tryst, sort of.
Interesting.
And this movie has so many twists and turns that you are not going to expect where it's going to go.
Okay.
And it's really funny.
What's it called?
It's
again?
called Tabloid.
It's a, what is it, documentary?
It's a documentary by Errol Morris. He's the guy who did Gates of Heaven and
So it's
Thin Blue Line.
real?
It's real. This is all real. And it is, you watch it and I can't really tell you what goes on because it's
Those are always the best.
It's too twisty and you think you're getting one story and then suddenly you've got another story going on.
Right.
And it's totally fun.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't sound fun that she's kidnapped somebody, but I'm not sure how much she really kidnapped him.
Does she keep him on a boat or something?
No, she goes to Europe, someplace in Europe, and so that's where that goes down. But there's more secrets in this than you ever expect.
Is it difficult to find?
It shouldn't be. They used to have it on Amazon Prime all the time. It's been on Netflix before. I'm sure you can find it. If you go to justwatch.com, it'll probably pop up someplace.
I actually bought curtains from Grindstone Video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think they're just online. Yeah, Grindhouse. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think they're online only now. I think they're physical stores.
Yeah.
It was like $4, and it's like totally worth it.
Well, I would buy a copy of Tabloid if I ran across it because it's that much fun. It's a documentary that I've watched 3 times because I've had to show it to people. It's like, you got to see this.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it's a great one.
I have a song, too, which I know you know. But so British actor Cosmo Jarvis.
Yeah.
Who's known for his role. He's this year he's been in Shogun on
I didn't know that.
FX, so he's been in the Shogun miniseries. He's the star of it, and he's been the star of a couple of other movies recently. I think Persuasion and something. It Is in Us All, but he's 34 now, and he's pretty well ingrained, as a movie star and all that. But when he was really young, he was more known for his music and his interesting songs. And he did this song when he was, I think, 21 or 22. It's from 2011 called Gay Pirates.
My friend Chris Newman introduced me to that song.
Yeah.
I love that song.
It's crazy. It's just, I don't know how it got made, and nothing like that's ever come about again. It's not a comedy. It's like a sea shanty, too.
Yeah.
So it's a sea shanty, and his whole perspective, it's like a bromance. That's a romance.
Yeah.
And it's just straight up. These 2 guys are stuck on the pirate ship with a bunch of other pirates who are beating them and raping them and going to throw them in the sea and drown them. And somehow it's just so weirdly sweet and straightforward. Touching. It is touching. It really is. And, they asked him, where did this come from? And he said that he just thought homophobia was ridiculous. I don't even think he's gay. But he said, he thought... homophobia was just absolutely ridiculous, and he wanted to put just a gay love story in like one of the most trying situations that 2 gay guys could be. And it's just I don't know, it just nothing like that I've heard before or since then. It was just really interesting. But I was just prompted by that because I realized, he's a big actor now, but I remember way back when, and everybody was watching it. It was like, is this going to be a joke? Is this insulting? But it never was.
No, the video's good.
Yeah, great video. It's like on a stage. It's almost like a high school presentation or something. And it's all these guys who are pirates, and him and, what is it, Yo-Ho, Sebastian. I mean, it's just like, it's a really great song. So
yeah,
that's my recommendation. Cosmo Jarvis, and Gay Pirates.
And I hardly agree on that. It's a great
one. I remember because I had to watch it all the way through because I'm like, something's going to happen here. And it was just, no, it was just like a, just straight up love story.
Well, it's funny because the person that I'm going to recommend has a song that's, I'll say in just a sec, but I'm going to recommend Danny O'Keefe. If you've never heard Danny O'Keefe is the guy who wrote Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues and had a hit with it back in, I think, 1972. Great songwriter. He also wrote The Road that Jackson Browne recorded, Angel Spread Your Wings that Judy Collins and lots of people recorded. I think Alison Krauss recorded one of his songs. But his catalog is great. Mm-hmm. And he has a song called Jody, and this song is probably 15 years old now, maybe older, about a trans person.
Oh.
And it's not a joke.
Right.
It's about a guy who he's got a thing for this girl, and he goes over to her house, and her brother comes out in her clothes.
Oh, interesting.
And it's just a guy trying to figure out what's going on, and it's really, really good. It's a kind of a sweet song, but it's not judgmental.
Right.
And it's funny how well it would fit today.
Right.
And people are trying to figure out what's going on with people.
Well, I know, and I've wondered about today. I wonder if gay pirates would,
Have you seen Our Flag Means Death?
I need to watch that.
No.
It's a TV show on HBO, I think.
Yeah. No.
It's about gay pirates.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want a cultural touchstone.
It's
the guy that plays Murray on Flight of the Conchords. Yeah. Their manager. He's the main character.
Yeah, I keep meaning to watch it. I think they canceled. I think it's only 2
canceled,
seasons.
but I think they did a couple seasons. And it's funny.
Okay.
You watch it. It's like What We Do in the Shadows, that kind of humor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Well, we kind of meandered all over the place, and we've gone over now, so I guess it's time to cut out.
Yep.
For the. All right.
We'll
thank you,
week.
everybody, and we'll be back with something new and interesting.
You've been listening to How We Heard It with Chuck Campbell and Wayne Bledsoe, a podcast about music, art, culture, movies, whatever they want to talk about. How We Heard It was recorded in Knoxville, Tennessee at the Arbor Studio by John Baker. If you believe you've been abducted by aliens during listening to this podcast, we take no responsibility for that. How We Heard It is a Tear Owl production, and if you'd like to reach out to Chuck or Wayne, send an email to howweheardit@gmail.com. Come on back next week and we'll have another show for you.